Happy Reformation Day, guys. Today is October 31st, which is the 506th anniversary of Martin Luther nailing the 95 Theses on the door of the Wittenberg Church. If you don't know about the Reformation, basically Martin Luther was a monk who saw a lot of problems with the Roman Catholic Church, specifically the indulgences that they were just kind of coercing people to buy and convincing them that it was necessary, and then they were making money off of people trying to find like freedom from the guilt they had over their sin. And so Martin Luther saw that as a problem, and he wrote 95 Theses against the Catholic Church, just things that he said that they should change. He didn't want to start a new church, but he wanted to reform the church and take it back to its biblical roots. And then a lot of other people joined in from all over Europe, like John Calvin is one of the most famous reformers from Switzerland. And then there was a bunch of other ones at the same time, and then people who succeeded them that eventually led to forming the Protestant Church. So, I have been reading a book in preparation for Reformation Day this year, and that is Reformation Women by Rebecca Van Duderwoord. And this is on the women that impacted the Reformation and shaped Christianity's rebirth during the 16th century. So I'm not quite finished with it yet, but I wanted to share it so that you could hear about this book just at the right time and be able to maybe get it. I know there's an audiobook, and start listening to it around this anniversary of the Reformation. So in the beginning when I read it, I was like, I don't know, I do really like biographies because I like being inspired by people who have lived their lives just in a godly way, or just seeing the way that they encounter different circumstances. But I think a biography has to be written really well, and that's very rare to find. So at first I wasn't really enjoying it, but then as I got into it, I just enjoyed like the little snippets and the facts that I learned, and found myself telling a lot of people about the things that I'd learned in this book. So it starts out with Anna Reinhard. Oh, and one thing about this book is that the names are all their maiden names, because a lot of them were married multiple times. And so it gives you their maiden names, and then you can kind of figure out like who they were married to. Anyways, Anna Reinhard, she was Zwingli's wife, and so it talks about how they met. She was known as his angel wife, and they just had a really sweet relationship together, and she helped him a lot in his ministry. And then Anna Adderschweiler, I dressed up as her for our Reformation Day party that we have at our church every year. I dressed up as her for the last 2 years, and I just think that she is such an amazing woman and such an inspiration of what I would like to be as a wife someday. And she was married to Heinrich Bullinger, and they had one of the first like love stories from the Reformation. It was the oldest existing love letter from a reformer, and when he proposed to her in this letter, he just was very logical in trying to convince her to marry him, which I think is so cool, because I'm a very logical person sometimes, and like coming up with all these arguments why someone should do something. And I think it's just funny how he didn't go based off emotion, but the reasons why they should get married. And so he said, "But why are many words necessary? The sum of it all is that the greatest, surest treasure that you will find in me is fear of God, piety, fidelity, and love, which with joy I will show you, in labor, earnestness, and industry, which will not be wanting in temporal things. Concerning high nobility and many thousand golden, I can say nothing to you. But I know that what is necessary to us will not be wanting. For Paul says, we brought nothing into the world, and we will take nothing out. Therefore, if we have food and clothing, it is enough." So she actually waited to marry him until her mother died, because her mother didn't approve of the marriage. They were like in a convent, and she was taking care of her mother. So they waited until her mother died, and then they got married and had a very quiet wedding. I thought it was funny. There was 11 children. And it says in this book, babies arrived almost yearly. So I think it's so cool that they had 6 sons and 5 daughters, and 2 of them became ministers, and all 5 of the daughters married pastors. So as someone from a pastor's family with a lot of brothers, I think that's just really cool, and I can definitely see me and all my sisters marrying someone who's in ministry. So I think I just really relate to Anna's story. Anyways, she was kind of like I think it said that she was the mother of the Reformation just because she was so good at being hospitable. And I love how it talked about that they didn't have much money, but they were able to make it through just because she was very frugal and very respectful of the money they had and spent it in the right places. And so I just loved her example. Then there's Katharina Schutz. That is Matthew Zell's wife. I don't really know much about Matthew Zell, but Katharina was a very bold wife. I think Matthew was a lot more timid, and she was bold and like stood up for her beliefs and argued for her husband and for people later on, even after he died. So quite the difference between her and Anna. And then Marguerite Blower, that is Ambrose Blower's sister, and she was one of the big like letter writers in the Reformation. A lot of the reformers would write letters to women and kind of mentor them, I guess. And so she was, I think, single her whole life, but she was a big support to the reformers and to her brother Ambrose. She even wrote to Bullinger at one point. Then Marguerite de Navarre was a queen, a Protestant queen in Navarre, and it was just really fascinating learning about her story and how her brother was a king and her husband was also a king, and her husband did not approve of Protestantism, so he slapped her in the face, and she wrote a letter to her brother saying, "I need you to protect me," and her brother basically was like, "Okay, let's fight war," and then her husband kind of backed down, so I thought that was kind of funny. And then her daughter was Jeanne d'Aubray, who was actually taken away from her so that Marguerite wouldn't teach her Protestantism, but then she ended up getting her back when she was like a teenager and was able to teach her. And then Jeanne, the most interesting fact about her, I thought, was that she had 5 children. One of them, or like 3 of them died. One of them was because the nurse and the maid were throwing the baby back and forth and accidentally tossed it out the window. Apparently, that's what the story is. But I just thought that was the weirdest story. But she was a lot more energetic about Calvinism than her mother was, and definitely was very outspoken about it, and led her country into Protestantism. And then Charlotte Arbelest, she escaped from the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, and she was actually excommunicated from a church because she refused to wear her hair straight whenever the church said that it was unbiblical to curl your hair, and she just asked over and over for them to give her a biblical reason why she should not curl her hair, or even like some historical reason, and they couldn't give her any, so she ended up leaving her church. Thought that was really interesting. I have no idea who she married though. Charlotte de Bourbon, she married Prince William William the First, the Prince of Orange, and she was his 3rd wife, and so she helped raise, I think, his 5 kids he had before, and then she had 6 kids, and then he almost died from an assassination attempt, but he didn't. But then the stress of it was too much, and so she ended up dying. And then Louis de Coligny, maybe, I'm not very good at French. She was William's next wife, and that's the next person in this book. And I was reading that today, and she had a really neat story. She was actually married at 17, and then her husband very quickly died at the same time as her father in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. So then she married William, and I haven't finished that chapter yet, but she was just a sweet, supportive wife. Then there's Catherine Willoughby, and she married Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk. And then, let's see, Renee of Ferrara was from Italy. And then Olympia Murata was also from Italy. I've read a book about her. So that are all the women in here. And then there's a family tree and kind of a timeline of everything that's happening with these women. So anyways, I thought this was super fascinating to learn about. I love learning about the reformers and what they did, but also to see the women. Some of them did big things that influenced the Reformation, but a lot of them were just supportive of their husbands and supportive of the cause in general. And if it wasn't for their service to their husband and their submission, then the Reformation would have not gone where it is today. And so I just thought that was really neat and really inspiring. And I think that if you guys are interested in learning more about the Reformation, that you should pick up this book and let that be the book that you read this year to learn about the Reformation. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Reformation Day, and I will see you guys back here in my next video. Bye.